Reputation of the national carrier has taken a battering.
This is very rare. For an airplane to disappear is not normal.
So many wanted answers when there were none.
March 8, 2014. 239 souls board Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, expecting a routine journey through the night sky. But just 40 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft suddenly drops off the radar, vanishing without a trace.
Bravo, November 2, Foxtrot, Beach.
4 weeks on from the plane mysteriously disappearing, time is running out.
In the 4 years following the disappearance, multiple searches, conspiracies, investigations and allegations took over the world. But the full story remained elusive.
There's a reference number on this part of the airplane.
This plane was never meant to be found.
A decade on, and the question remains. Where is flight MH370? Retrace the mysterious timeline of events as we recount those moments, minute by minute. Flight MH370's satellite data unit logs onto the Inmarsat satellite communication network. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah and First Officer Tariq Abdul Hamid sign in for duty around an hour prior. After the 12 crew members and 227 passengers board the aircraft, Air Traffic Control gives Flight 370 clearance to push back from the gate.
Aviation 370 is fled to Beijing via Pibos Alpha departure, 6,000 feet, squawk 2157.
Beijing, Pibos Alpha, 6,000, squawk 2157, Malaysian 370, thank you.
Aviation 370, welcome, over the ground.
Aviation 370, taxi to Oripan Alpha 11, runway 3 to right via standard route, Horseshoe Bravo. Alpha 11, standard route, Horseshoe Bravo, Malaysian 370.
ATC gives Flight 370 clearance to take off.
370, 3 to right of takeoff. Nice. 3 to right, destination Malaysia 37, thank you.
Flight 370 successfully takes off from runway 32R at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Air Traffic Control then instructs the pilot to climb to flight level 180, approximately 18,000 feet, and proceed directly to waypoint Igari. Flight 370 is transferred from the airport's air traffic control to Lumpur Radar ATC, based at the Kuala Lumpur Area Control Center, KLACC. ATC then gives clearance to climb to flight level 250, approximately 25,000 feet.
Malaysian 370, Lumpur Radar, good morning. Climb flight level 250.
Morning, level 250, Malaysian 370.
ATC gives Flight 370 clearance to climb to flight level 350, approximately 35,000 feet.
Malaysian 370, climb flight level 350.
Climb level 350, Malaysian 370.
Captain Zahari informs air traffic control that the aircraft has reached flight level 350. The final data transmission from Flight 370 is made using the ACARS protocol. In the next hour, the satellite communication link is lost. It is unknown when exactly this occurs.
370 maintaining level 350.
Malaysian 370.
Moments later, the captain confirms to air traffic control that the plane is flying at flight level 350. As the crew is instructed to contact Ho Chi Minh ACC after the aircraft passes waypoint Igari, Captain Zahari confirms this.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
This would be the final voice contact with Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. Less than 2 minutes after the final radio communication between ATC and the aircraft, Flight 370 vanishes from radar in Kuala Lumpur, Ho Chi Minh and Bangkok, indicating the 777's transponder is no longer functioning. HCM-ACC requests another aircraft to make verbal contact with Flight 370. Only radio static is heard in reply. The ACARS data transmission, expected every half an hour, is not received. After almost 20 minutes of no contact, HCM-ACC reaches out to Kuala Lumpur to inquire about MH370's whereabouts. Both ground stations report losing the aircraft on radar, with its last known position being near waypoint Baitod. Despite the transponder being inactive, Malaysian military radar continues to track the aircraft, which almost immediately begins a left turn and starts traveling in a southwesterly direction. Ho Chi Minh ACC contacts KLACC and informs them that radar contact with Flight 370 was established near Igari but lost near Baitod, and that verbal contact was never established. It is believed that at some point during the plane's return over Malaysia and past Penang, the SATCOM link was severed. Flight 370 reaches the southern end of Penang Island. First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid's cell phone registers with a cell tower below, indicating how low the plane must be flying at this point. Flight 370 then turns back on itself, this time pointing northwest, heading along the Strait of Malacca. HCM-ACC informs KLACC there is still no contact with Flight 370, despite attempts on many frequencies and aircraft in the vicinity. Malaysia Airlines Dispatch Center sends a message to the cockpit instructing pilots to contact Vietnam ATC. There is still no response. A ground-to-aircraft ACARS data request, transmitted from the ground station multiple times in the following 2 minutes, is not acknowledged by the aircraft's satellite data unit. KLACC contacts HCMACC, relaying information from Malaysia Airlines Operations Center that Flight 370 is in Cambodian airspace. Malaysia Airlines Operations Center confirms to KLACC that it is able to exchange signals with Flight 370, which is in Cambodian airspace. KLACC contacts HCMACC, asking them whether Flight 370 was supposed to enter Cambodian airspace. HCMACC replies that Flight 370's planned route did not take it into Cambodian airspace and that they had checked. Cambodia had no information about or contact with the aircraft. The last primary radar contact is made by the Malaysian military, 200 nautical miles northwest of Penang. A log-on request, known as a handshake, is sent by the aircraft on its satellite communication link to the Inmarsat satellite communications network. The link is re-established after being lost for between 22 and 68 minutes, a significant indication of the aircraft's activity. Malaysia Airlines Operations Center informs KLACC that Flight 370 is in a normal condition based on signals from the aircraft located above northern Vietnam. KLACC relays this information to HCMACC. A ground-to-aircraft telephone call via the aircraft's satellite link goes unanswered. Malaysia Airlines Operations Center informs KLACC that position information was based on flight projection and is not reliable for aircraft tracking. In the following hours, Kuala Lumpur and Ho Chi Minh area control centers query Chinese air traffic control. An hourly automated handshake is made between the aircraft and the Inmarsat satellite communication network. Another hourly handshake between Flight 370 and the Inmarsat communication network is made. Singapore ACC is queried for information about Flight 370. No communication is made. The hourly log-on request is made again between the aircraft and Inmarsat. It is important to remember that these SATCOM signals retain no information about location or altitude and exist solely to ensure the receiving terminal is still online. Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 misses its scheduled arrival at Beijing Capital International Airport. The Kuala Lumpur Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Center is activated. Once again, the automated handshake is made between the aircraft and the Inmarsat satellite communication network. Another attempt at a ground-to-aircraft telephone call is placed by Malaysia Airlines via the aircraft's satellite link. This again goes unanswered. Malaysia Airlines issues an official press statement announcing that Flight 370 is missing. The last successful automated hourly handshake is made with the Inmarsat satellite communication network. The aircraft sends a log-on request to the satellite. Investigators believe this follows a power failure between the time the engine's stopping, due to fuel exhaustion, and the emergency power generator starting. Following a response from the ground station, the aircraft replies with a log-on acknowledgement message. This is the final transmission received from Flight 370. The aircraft does not respond to the hourly automated handshake attempt. All communications with Flight 370 come to an end. What would come next was a decade of mystery, speculation, and conspiracy. And the biggest and most expensive search in aviation history.
At this hour, a desperate search is underway for MH Flight 370, which departed Kuala Lumpur at 12:41 a.m. local time and was due to land in Beijing at 6:30 a.m. Air traffic control lost contact with the plane about 2 hours after takeoff. Whether the disappearance is due to mechanical problems, pilot error, or even terrorism is yet to be determined.
Immediately after MH370 is declared missing, Vietnamese rescue planes spot large oil slicks in the Gulf of Thailand near Tho Chu Island. Initial concerns arise, but the slicks are soon identified as coming from a nearby ship, not the missing plane. As military radar data reveals more about the plane's position, the search, initially led by Malaysia and focused between the Gulf of Thailand and the South China Sea, quickly escalates into a multinational rescue operation. The operation involves 22 military aircraft and 19 ships from China, Australia, Malaysia, and Japan, with additional support from New Zealand, the USA, South Korea, and the UK. The search expands to cover the Strait of Malacca, the Andaman Sea, and the Bay of Bengal. Inmarsat analysts calculate the distance between MH370 and the satellite by measuring the time it took for the signal to be sent to the aircraft, replied to and received back. This breakthrough allows investigators to map out 7 rings, representing potential positions of the aircraft at the time of each hourly handshake. By the morning of March 11th, Inmarsat identifies 2 potential flight paths, referred to as arcs, and shares this critical information with Malaysian investigators, marking a significant breakthrough in the search. After analysis shows the plane turned south toward the Indian Ocean, Malaysia requests Australia to take over the search operations, as the area falls within its search and rescue region. The search area spans approximately 600,000 square kilometers. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority, supported by the Australian Defence Force, coordinates a surface search by aircraft and vessels in the Indian Ocean. At 10 p.m. local time, Prime Minister Najib Razak announces at a press conference that flight MH370 is presumed to have gone down in the southern Indian Ocean, with no survivors.
Based on new satellite communication, we can say with a high degree of certainty that the aircraft communications addressing and reporting system, or ATEP, was disabled just before the aircraft reached the east coast of Peninsula Malaysia. It then flew in a westerly direction back over Peninsula Malaysia before turning northwest, up until the point at which it left military primary radar coverage. These movements are consistent with deliberate action by someone on the plane. According to the new data, the last confirmed communication between the plane and the satellite was at 8:11 a.m. Malaysian time on Saturday, 8th of March. Despite media reports that the plane was hijacked, I wish to be very clear. We are still investigating all possibilities as to what caused MH370 to deviate from its original flight path.
The search area is now focused on the southern part of the Indian Ocean. The northern search corridor northwest of Malaysia, as well as the northern half of the southern search corridor between Indonesia and Australia, are definitively ruled out. Around 200 relatives of flight MH370's passengers march in protest outside the Malaysian embassy in Beijing, a rare event in China. the grieving relatives chant liars and tell the truth, return our relatives. China demands Malaysia hand over the satellite data that led them to conclude flight MH370 ended in the southern Indian Ocean with no survivors. China also sends a special envoy to Malaysia. The Australian Navy's disaster relief vessel, ADV Ocean Shield, and the Royal Navy survey ship, HMS Echo, shift the search efforts underwater. They focus on detecting acoustic signals, or pings, from the missing aircraft's black box in hopes of locating Flight 370's flight recorders. Chinese search ships, using handheld equipment, eventually detect several pings. In response, ADV Ocean Shield is deployed, equipped with a towed pinger locator to narrow down the source of the signals and help pinpoint the location of the pings. While the seafloor sonar survey continues, the surface search concludes. The search in Southeast Asia and the Indian Ocean has lasted 52 days. More than 4.5 million square kilometers of ocean surface has been searched. In the southern Indian Ocean, 29 aircraft from 7 countries conducted 334 search flights, and 14 ships from multiple countries also joined the effort. A bathymetric survey of the ocean floor is conducted to map its contours and depth, helping to determine which equipment is suitable for the search operations. The survey better enables the safer operations and detection capabilities of the seafloor sonar equipment for the next phase of the search. The seafloor sonar survey concludes having scanned over 150,000 square kilometers at depths of 3,000 to 5,000 meters. No objects related to Flight 370 are found. The head of Malaysia's government committee handling the needs of Flight 370's families announces interim compensation of $50,000 per missing passenger. Over the following 8 months, multiple new search areas are outlined and surveyed. In accordance with the Chicago Convention, the Malaysian government officially declares Flight 370's disappearance as an accident with no survivors. On the first anniversary of the disappearance, Malaysia's Ministry of Transport releases an interim report, focusing on factual information rather than the analysis of causes. One significant issue, not previously revealed to the public, is that the battery in the underwater locator beacon attached to the flight data recorder had expired in December 2012, potentially impairing its performance. More than a year and a half after the initial disappearance, multiple shipwrecks and obscure geological formations had raised suspicions amongst the 4.6 million square kilometers of ocean that were searched. yet no indication of MH370 was found. Until the first piece of the puzzle washes up on a small island in the Western Indian Ocean 2 months later.
Here, they still can't pinpoint the exact coordinates of the plane, so the search at sea will continue.
The journalist in La Réunion just sent us a picture just to investigate if it could suit with an aircraft, with a piece of an aircraft. So with my team, we just looked at hundreds and thousands of pictures. We just tried to figure out which plane it could belong to. We found only one match. It was the flaperon of a Boeing 777. And not only the shape match, but also all the connections and all the holes that are very specific for this kind of pieces of plane.
In July 2015, a piece of aircraft debris and a suitcase washes ashore on a beach on Reunion Island. Located in the Western Indian Ocean, about 4,000 kilometers west of the current underwater search area. The debris is found to be an aircraft wing flaperon and is transported to Toulouse, France, where it is examined by the BEA, the Civil Aviation Accident Investigation Agency.
We also saw that there's a reference number on this part of the airplane. It doesn't fit with a serial number of a full airplane or with an immatriculation of plane, but it suits, it might be just the serial number of this specific piece. So I'm quite sure that now in Boeing, they know exactly if this piece belongs to a Boeing 777, and if it does, if it's the MH370. It appears that some specialists also say that the shells that are on this wreckage are just specific of something that spent about a year and a half or 2 years in the water.
Scientists believe the waves and winds that sweep the Indian Ocean could easily carry the debris from the suspected crash site west to the shores of Réunion.
The question now is, of course, what more wreckage might be out there and whether it's heading this way. Réunion Island is a long way from anywhere, and we are still a long way from solving this mystery.
The Malaysian Prime Minister announces that experts have conclusively confirmed that the flaperon found on July 29th is from Flight 370. This debris becomes the first physical evidence that Flight 370 ended in the Indian Ocean. In the following week, a number of claims are made of more debris washing up on surrounding islands and coastlines. Malaysia's government news agency releases a new theory suggesting that Flight 370 may have made a soft landing on the water, floated for some time, and then sank mostly in one piece. On September 3, 2015, serial numbers found on internal components of the flaperon allow investigators to conclusively determine, with certainty, that the piece is linked to Flight 370. Investigators analyze predicted oceanic drift patterns for MH370 debris, factoring in ocean currents and wind speeds. The locations of the discovered debris generally align with these predictions. However, not all debris contains identifiable details like serial numbers. The analysis identifies the most probable location of Flight 370 when it entered the water, as being within the southern half of the existing search zone.
Debris could move certainly 600 or 700 kilometres perhaps over a 2-week timescale, but it really depends upon whether the currents are travelling in the same direction or whether they've been caught in a vortex, in which case they may be quite close to the area of the original debris field.
Media report the discovery of a suspected horizontal stabilizer on a sandbar in Mozambique, which may have come from a Boeing 777. The object, found by an American tourist the previous weekend, is flown to Australia for examination. The Australian Minister for Transport announces that 2 pieces of debris, one discovered earlier in March and another found in December 2015, are almost certainly from MH370. A part of an engine cowling is also found on the coast of South Africa. Australia announces that a piece of aircraft debris, believed to be an outboard wing flap, has been found on Pemba Island, off the coast of Tanzania. Malaysia's Transport Ministry confirms it is from Flight 370, based on identifying part numbers and date stamps, and is the largest piece found since the flaperon back in July 2015. A total of 39 pieces were recovered during the search, of which 3 are confirmed to be from MH370, 7 are classified as almost certain, 12 are deemed likely or highly likely, 10 are considered possible, and the rest remain too difficult to accurately classify. Despite the uncertainties, the flaperon, found back in July of 2015, became the first concrete piece of evidence linking the crash to the Indian Ocean. This discovery confirmed that MH370 had indeed ended its flight in these waters. Investigators hoped this breakthrough would provide crucial insights into what happened to the aircraft after its disappearance, and various theories and suspicions were raised to bring them closer to uncovering the mystery. In the aftermath of the disappearance, many theories and estimations arose. New data and information becoming available provided investigators with more conclusive reasons as to what could have possibly happened to Flight 370. During the initial investigation of MH370's contents, the cargo manifest was closely examined. Malaysian police questioned Chinese importers and handlers of around 4,500 kilograms of fruit on board to rule out sabotage. One item on the manifest, however, drew more attention: a pallet of lithium-ion batteries. These batteries, part of a 2,400 kilogram shipment from a Motorola Solutions facility, are known for their flammability and sensitivity to temperature changes. Despite suspicions, none of the recovered debris showed clear signs of an onboard fire. Investigators theorized that a fire might explain the plane's initial turn back towards Malaysia, suggesting the pilot could have been attempting an emergency landing. While lithium-ion battery fires have caused accidents on cargo planes before, investigators concluded that if a fire had occurred between checkpoints Igari and Baitod, and the aircraft continued flying for hours, it would be impossible for the debris to show no signs of fire damage. On the morning of the plane's disappearance, Austria and Italy confirmed that 2 individuals listed on the passenger manifest had not been aboard the flight. Both men's passports had been stolen in Thailand within the past 2 years, raising questions about possible identity fraud. Another passenger, who worked as a flight engineer for a Swiss jet charter company, came under brief suspicion as a potential hijacker due to his perceived aviation skills that could have been relevant to the incident. Interpol later confirmed that the passports of the Austrian and Italian passengers were flagged in its database of stolen passports, but no query was made before the flight. Though concerns about a possible terrorist connection arose, officials stated that no links to terrorism had been found thus far. Malaysian police reveal that the 2 passengers traveling with stolen passports were Iranian men, believed to be asylum seekers attempting to reach Germany, with their tickets set to end in Frankfurt. The head of Interpol later commented, "The more information we get, the more we are inclined to conclude this is not a terrorist incident." In the hours while Flight 370 was still airborne, the aircraft made no attempt to return to Malaysia, nor did it contact ground control to report a fire. This absence of communication led to the theory of hypoxia, a condition that occurs when an aircraft fails to pressurize, incapacitating the crew due to a lack of oxygen at high altitudes. In cases of hypoxia, oxygen masks are deployed throughout the cabin, and protocol dictates that the pilot should immediately descend to a breathable altitude where the emergency oxygen supply is no longer necessary, allowing for an emergency landing. Although military radar tracked the aircraft's altitude early on, this data has been disregarded by investigators due to its inconsistencies and, at times, implausibility. Simulated attempts to replicate the radar's course proved unsuccessful. Investigators have concluded that while subsequent maneuvers over Penang and toward the Indian Ocean were within the capabilities of the autopilot system, the first turn after checkpoint Igari was only possible through manual control by someone on board the aircraft. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a highly experienced pilot with over 18,000 flight hours accumulated during his 33-year career at Malaysia Airlines, had flown 8,659 of those hours on the Boeing 777. Known for his impressive track record, Zahari was a respected senior pilot with an unblemished professional history. A thorough investigation into his personal life revealed no unusual behavior or irregularities in his financial and medical records. At the time of the disappearance, Zahari was 53 years old and left behind a wife and 3 children. The report revealed that Captain Zahari had a sophisticated flight simulator at home, which he built with the help of online aviation enthusiasts and engineers.
Hi everyone, this is a YouTube video that I made as a community
Emails and
service.
message board discussions between Zahari and these communities detailed the simulator's construction. Following MH370's disappearance, many members of these groups came forward to vouch for Zahari's character, noting that it wasn't uncommon for dedicated pilots to have high-quality home simulators. When investigators seized the hard drive from Zahari's simulator, they found it had been wiped. However, they were able to recover data, including a simulated flight that traced a route similar to MH370's, heading northwest over the Strait of Malacca, diverting south and ending in the southern Indian Ocean. This information was initially omitted from investigation reports and only surfaced through a 2016 leak of confidential documents. The recovered flight path raised suspicions and was examined as potential evidence for a murder-suicide theory involving Zahari. This leak fueled media speculation, leading many to assume Zahari was responsible for the plane's disappearance. Since the hard drive was wiped, investigators had to reconstruct the flight path from 7 loose coordinates recovered from an autosave feature in the X-Plane 10 simulator. These coordinates didn't necessarily represent a single route or session, and investigators concluded that the integrity of this data was too weak to support claims of premeditation. The only behavior raising concern about Zahari comes from his final communication with Kuala Lumpur Air Traffic Control. Upon reaching checkpoint Igari and entering Vietnamese airspace, either Zahari or his first officer should have contacted Ho Chi Minh on frequency 120.9. While Zahari acknowledged this instruction, he didn't repeat the frequency back to ATC, as is standard procedure. Instead, he signed off with a simple,
Good night, Malaysia, 370.
Although this abbreviation of protocol stands out, given Zahari's extensive experience, it's not unusual for a seasoned pilot like him to shorten such messages. Was this a minor oversight or a subtle indication that Zahari had no intention of contacting Ho Chi Minh at all? Despite the immense efforts of global teams involved in the search for MH370, the aircraft remains undiscovered. On January 17, 2017, the governments of Malaysia, Australia, and China announced the suspension of the search.
It's so important that we get some form of closure. It's so important that they do not give up on the people that we love. In the interest of aviation safety, it is important that they don't give up so easily. Because if this were ever to happen again, we want to know that the people responsible will be committed.
I feel that we all taken on this long merry-go-round, something cruel, but I think something totally unavoidable. It is I feel it's a very, very big story beyond you and me. And I think even governments have to play their role, careful with what they say, what they don't say. We will never find this plane. This plane was never meant to be found.
Definitely we know they ended their lives at the Indian Ocean, as Prime Minister Najib said, last year. It's not the end, although they found something, it's not the end. They still need to find the whole plane and our spouses as well.
Yes.
We still want them back.
Yeah.
One piece of debris doesn't represent my husband. It just says the plane is there, so now you need to bring everybody back. Only want everybody back, no matter, as Lee said, in whatever form. At least we can give them a proper send-off and say goodbye properly.
On October 3rd, the ATSB officially concluded its role in the search, after which the Malaysian government initiated a second search led by American marine robotics company Ocean Infinity in January the following year. After 4 months and nearly 200,000 square kilometers searched, they announced the conclusion of this second search. The aircraft remains unfound.
This does not mean that we have given up on locating MH370.
There is no closure until the plane is found, until we exactly know what happened to the aircraft and to our loved ones on board. Yes, it gets tougher every year because we are all expecting, some answers.
We have absolutely no idea why it disappeared and where it is. And that's not a happy situation to be in, for you, for me, and for anybody in the world, and for everybody who flies to their destinations day in and day out. Because if it's happened once, I believe it could happen again.
Without the recovery of the main wreckage, flight data recorder, or cockpit voice recorder, the investigation could not draw definitive conclusions about what happened to MH370. Following the 10th anniversary of the tragic disappearance, Ocean Infinity announced its intention to resume the search, pending approval from the Malaysian government. Claims of yet-to-be-identified new evidence has incited victims' families to further push for this new development. Ocean Infinity's confidence in their technology and strategy could provide a new glimmer of hope for the families of those missing. And maybe one day we will finally uncover definitive answers to what is considered one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time.